ExamPrep.School. Missouri Property and Casualty Insurance Producer Exam Code 55. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Casualty but insurance terms and related concepts. Casualty policy provisions. Casualty types of policies, bonds, and related terms. Common to all lines. Missouri casualty statutes and rules. Missouri property statutes and rules. Property, insurance terms and related concepts. Property, policy provisions and contract law. Property, types of policies. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Which statement correctly contrasts the coverage perils provided by HO2 and HO3 homeowners forms? A. HO2 covers the dwelling on an open peril basis and personal property on a named peril basis. HO3 covers both dwelling and personal property on a named peril basis. B. Both the HO2 and HO3 forms provide open peril coverage for the dwelling and named peril coverage for personal property. C. Both the HO2 and HO3 forms provide coverage for both the dwelling and personal property solely on a named peril basis. D. HO2 covers dwelling and personal property on a named peril basis. HO3 covers dwelling on an open peril basis and personal property on a named peril basis. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is the only option that accurately states that HO2 provides named peril coverage for both dwelling and personal property, while HO3 provides open peril coverage for the dwelling and named peril coverage for personal property. Reason A is not correct. This choice is incorrect because it reverses the coverage for HO2, suggesting open peril coverage for the dwelling when HO2 actually limits dwelling coverage to named perils. Reason B is not correct. This choice is incorrect because HO2 does not provide open peril coverage for the dwelling. It is limited to named perils. Reason C is not correct. This choice is incorrect because HO3 does not limit dwelling coverage to named perils. It provides open peril coverage for the dwelling. Question 2. Which best describes the peril coverage under an HO5 homeowners policy? A. Under an HO5 policy, both the dwelling and personal property are covered on an open peril basis, with losses subject only to listed exclusions. B. Under an HO5 policy, the dwelling is covered on a named peril basis and personal property on an open peril basis, with losses limited to those specified. C. Under an HO5 policy, the dwelling is covered on an open peril basis and personal property on a named peril basis, with exclusions for unspecified perils. D. Under an HO5 policy, both the dwelling and personal property are covered on a named peril basis, excluding perils not specifically listed in the policy. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is the one that accurately reflects that an HO5 policy provides open peril coverage for both the dwelling and personal property, subject only to the policy's listed exclusions. Reason B is not correct. This choice is incorrect because the dwelling under this policy is not limited to named perils. It is covered on an open peril basis. Reason C is not correct. This choice is incorrect because personal property under this policy is not limited to named perils. It is covered on an open peril basis. Reason D is not correct. This choice is incorrect because neither dwelling nor personal property is limited to named perils under this policy. Both receive open peril coverage. Question 3. Angela rents a 2-bedroom apartment and has an HO4 policy. She places her bicycle and a set of golf clubs in a rented off-site storage unit. During a burglary at the storage facility, all items are stolen. Which coverage under her H04 policy will reimburse her for this loss? A. Coverage A, dwelling protection. B. Coverage C, personal property. C. Coverage B, other structures. D. Coverage D, loss of use. The correct answer is B. This option is correct because coverage C under an H04 policy ensures the tenant's personal property both on and off the premises, including property stored in a rented facility. Reason A is not correct. Dwelling protection does not apply because the insured does not own the structure, and H04 does not provide coverage A. Reason C is not correct. Other structures is not provided under H04 because that form does not cover structures on the resident's premises. Reason D is not correct. Loss of use covers additional living expenses if the residence becomes uninhabitable, not theft of personal property. Question 4. Olivia owns a condominium unit and carries an H06 policy. She installs custom built-in bookcases throughout her unit. A water leak from an adjacent unit floods and ruins the bookcases. Which coverage under her H06 policy will reimburse her for the damaged bookcases? A. Coverage C, personal property. B. Coverage A, dwelling protection, improvements and betterments. C. Coverage D, loss of use. D. Coverage E, loss assessment. The correct answer is B. This option is correct because coverage A under an H06 policy ensures the unit owner's improvements and betterments, such as built-in fixtures, against covered perils. Reason A is not correct. Personal property covers movable belongings, not permanently installed improvements. Reason C is not correct. Loss of use covers additional living expenses, not restoration of fixtures. Reason D is not correct. Loss assessment covers association assessments, not the insured's own improvements. Question 5. Which peril is automatically insured under a DP1 basic form without purchasing an extended coverage endorsement? A. Internal explosion. B. Smoke. C. Windstorm. D. External explosion. The correct answer is A. The DP1 basic form automatically names fire, lightning, and internal explosion as covered perils. External explosion, windstorm, and smoke are only covered if an extended coverage endorsement is added. Reason B is not correct. This is incorrect because smoke is only covered when an extended coverage endorsement is attached. Reason C is not correct. This is incorrect because windstorm is an extended coverage peril requiring an endorsement. Reason D is not correct. This is incorrect because external explosion is included only via the extended coverage endorsement. Question 6. A landlord insures a seasonal rental dwelling under a DP1 basic form. Concerned about frozen pipes during an unoccupied winter, the landlord upgrades to a DP2 broad form. Which peril would be covered under the DP2 broad form that was not covered under the DP1 basic form? A. Freezing of plumbing pipes inside the walls. B. Flood damage from surface water backup. C. Loss due to war or military action. D. Theft of copper wiring from the structure. The correct answer is A. DP2 broad form explicitly names freezing of plumbing as a covered peril, whereas the DP1 basic form does not provide coverage for freezing-related damage. Reason B is not correct. Flood and surface water backup are excluded perils under the DP2 broad form. Reason C is not correct. Damage caused by war or military action is an exclusion under most dwelling forms, including DP2. Reason D is not correct. Theft of dwelling materials is not a named peril under DP2. Question 7. A homeowner switches coverage on a rental dwelling from a DP2 broad form to a DP3 special form. Open perils policy. Overnight, copper wiring embedded in the interior walls is stolen. Which loss would be covered under the DP3 special form but would not have been covered under the DP2 broad form? A. Interior mold growth behind drywall. B. Gradual deterioration and wear of wooden beams. C. Structural damage from earth movement and settling. D. Theft of copper wiring permanently attached to the structure. The correct answer is D. Under the DP3 special form, all perils are covered, except those specifically excluded. Theft of attached structural components is not an exclusion, whereas DP2 does not cover theft of dwelling materials. Reason A is not correct. Mold growth is a gradual deterioration excluded under DP3. Reason B is not correct. Gradual wear and tear is excluded under the open perils DP3 form. Reason C is not correct. Earth movement and settling are specifically excluded perils on the DP3 form. Question 8. Under ISO, Business Owners Policy Eligibility Guidelines, a single building qualifies for coverage if it does not exceed a certain number of stories and total floor area. Which of the following combinations correctly reflects those maximum limits? A. 3 stories, 50,000 square feet. B. 4 stories, 75,000 square feet. C. 6 stories, 100,000 square feet. D. 8 stories, 150,000 square feet. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is that a business owner's policy insures buildings of up to 6 stories and no more than 100,000 square feet, matching ISO small to mid-size risk criteria. Other options list limits that either understate or exceed the prescribed maximums. Reason A is not correct. The limits listed are too restrictive. The policy allows larger buildings. Reason B is not correct. The floor area and story count are below the ISO maximums, and so do not match eligibility requirements. Reason D is not correct. These limits exceed the standard maximum size and height permitted by the policy. Question 9. A retail shop leases a warehouse and is insured under a business owner's policy. The tenant installs permanent shelving units and partitions to customize the space. Under the commercial property building and business personal property coverage forms, which coverage would apply to the tenant's shelving and partitions? A. Business personal property coverage. B. Building coverage. C. Personal property of others coverage. D. Equipment breakdown coverage. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that business personal property coverage applies to tenant improvements and betterments, whereas building coverage applies only to structures owned by the insured. Reason B is not correct. Building coverage applies only to buildings owned by the insured, not tenant improvements. Reason C is not correct. Personal property of others covers property the insured holds for others, not tenant-owned improvements. Reason D is not correct. Equipment breakdown coverage applies only to mechanical failures, not to shelving or partitions. Question 10. A storage facility insured under a commercial property policy with the causes of loss basic form suffers a roof collapse due to the weight of ice accumulation. How will the insurer respond under this form? A. Pays the loss only if the special form had been selected instead of the basic form. B. Pays the loss under a collapse additional coverage in the basic form. C. Pays the loss as a covered cause under the broad form provisions. D. Denies the loss because collapse is excluded under the basic form. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is that the basic causes of loss form excludes collapse losses, so a roof collapse from ice weight is not covered under that form. Reason A is not correct. Coverage would apply only under the special form, not automatically under the basic form. Reason B is not correct. There is no collapse additional coverage provided in the basic form. Reason C is not correct. The policy uses the basic form, so broad form provisions do not apply. Question 11. Under the parent set clause of a personal articles floater, the insurer's liability for the loss of one earring from a scheduled pair of earrings is limited to A. The full scheduled value of the pair of earrings. B. Twice the scheduled value of the missing earring. C. The difference between the scheduled value of the pair before and after the loss. D. The scheduled value of the single missing earring. The correct answer is D. The parent set clause restricts payment to the scheduled amount of the lost piece rather than the full pair value or any multiple thereof. Reason A is not correct. This overstates coverage since the clause does not pay the full scheduled pair value for loss of a single item. Reason B is not correct. Coverage does not multiply the item's value. It is limited to the scheduled amount of the lost piece. Reason C is not correct. Valuation difference methods apply to total set loss, but not to the loss of a single scheduled item under this clause. Question 12. A regional electronics distributor regularly ships inventory via common carriers across state lines and desires continuous coverage for goods in transit throughout the year. Which inland marine instrument best meets this need? A. Trip transit policy. B. Annual transit policy. C. Motor truck cargo policy. D. Installation floater. The correct answer is B. The annual transit policy provides continuous coverage for multiple shipments over a specified period, ensuring goods in transit are protected year-round. A trip transit policy only covers a single shipment. A motor truck cargo policy addresses the carrier's liability rather than the shipper's property, and an installation floater covers equipment during installation at a job site. Reason A is not correct. Only covers a single specified shipment and does not provide year-round coverage. Reason C is not correct. Focuses on the carrier's liability for cargo, not the shipper's broader inland marine property risk. Reason D is not correct. Covers equipment during installation activities, not goods in transit between locations. Question 13. Which of the following statements best distinguishes a speculative risk from a pure risk? A. It involves only the possibility of loss or no loss. B. It may result in financial gain as well as loss. C. It arises exclusively from physical damage to property. D. It is always transferred to an insurer through a contract. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is the option describing potential for gain or loss, which is the defining characteristic of speculative risk, whereas pure risk involves only loss or no loss. Reason A is not correct. This describes pure risk, which carries only the possibility of loss or no loss, not speculative risk. Reason C is not correct. Physical damage to property is a type of peril or exposure, not a classification distinguishing pure from speculative risk. Reason D is not correct. Risk transfer to an insurer is a risk management technique, not a feature that defines speculative risk. Question 14. Which of the following most accurately defines a moral hazard? A. An attitude of indifference or carelessness that increases loss frequency. B. Intentional misrepresentation or concealment of facts to obtain benefit. C. A physical condition that heightens the chance of damage occurring. D. A financial trend that raises overall exposure to loss. The correct answer is B. The correct answer describes deliberate dishonesty or concealment, which is the hallmark of a moral hazard. The other options describe attitudinal, physical, or economic hazards. Reason A is not correct. This describes a morale hazard, which is an attitude or indifference, not deliberate fraud. Reason C is not correct. This refers to a physical hazard such as a condition that increases peril likelihood. Reason D is not correct. This describes a broad economic or financial exposure, not a behavioral hazard. Question 15. An underwriter assessing the Carter family's home notes that the foundation has multiple visible cracks. The homeowners sometimes delay minor maintenance tasks. Neighboring properties have experienced acts of vandalism, and the family has a history of late premium payments. Which condition exemplifies a physical hazard in this context? A. Past acts of vandalism at nearby properties. B. Delayed minor maintenance by homeowners. C. Foundation cracks undermining structural stability. D. History of late premium payments. The correct answer is C. Physical hazards are tangible conditions that increase the frequency or severity of loss. The cracked foundation weakens structural support and elevates risk. Reason A is not correct. This describes a peril, as vandalism is an event that causes loss, not a condition increasing likelihood of loss. Reason B is not correct. This describes a morale hazard, since procrastinated maintenance reflects attitude rather than a physical condition. Reason D is not correct. This relates to underwriting criteria or credit risk, not a physical hazard condition. Question 16. Which component forms the basis of calculating actual cash value? ACV under most property insurance policies. A. Original cost less depreciation. B. Replacement cost less depreciation. C. Replacement cost less deductible. D. Fair market value at time of loss. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is replacement cost less depreciation, because actual cash value is determined by subtracting depreciation from the cost to replace the property at today's prices. Reason A is not correct. Original cost less depreciation is incorrect because ACV uses current replacement cost, not the historical purchase price. Reason C is not correct. Replacement cost less deductible is wrong because the deductible is applied after ACV is calculated, not in place of depreciation. Reason D is not correct. Fair market value at time of loss is incorrect because ACV is based on replacement cost minus depreciation, not perceived market value. Question 17. Under replacement cost valuation in property insurance, which condition typically must be met before an insurer will pay the depreciation holdback? A. Provide a contractor's estimate without completing actual repairs. B. Insured submits receipts and verification of repairs restoring property to like kind and quality. C. Furnish a sworn proof of loss before repair completion. D. Aim at policy to increase coverage limit by endorsement. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is that the insured must submit receipts and verification of repairs, restoring the property to like kind and quality, and since insurers withhold depreciation until repairs are completed. Reason A is not correct. Providing an estimate without completing repairs is incorrect because the holdback is only released after actual repair work is done. Reason C is not correct. Furnishing proof of loss before repairs is wrong because that document does not confirm that repairs have been finished. Reason D is not correct. Amending the policy to increase the limit is incorrect because holdbacks are released based on repair completion, not policy endorsements. Question 18. A homeowner's 110-year-old farmhouse features original horsehair plaster walls and outdated knob and tube wiring that can no longer be sourced. The insurer offers several valuation options. Which option will best ensure the policy provides coverage to rebuild the home using current materials and functional equivalents when original materials are obsolete? A. Replacement cost value. B. Agreed value. C. Extended replacement cost. D. Functional replacement cost. The correct answer is D. Functional replacement cost coverage reimburses for rebuilding with modern materials or methods that perform the same function when original materials are obsolete without applying depreciation. Reason A is not correct. Replacement cost value requires rebuilding with like kind and quality materials, which aren't available for obsolete features. Reason B is not correct. An agreed value sets a predetermined payout and does not adjust to cover functional substitutes for outdated materials. Reason C is not correct. Extended replacement cost adds a percentage buffer to the limit, but still mandates like kind materials, not functional alternatives. Question 19. Which of the following best describes the primary function of an insurance binder in property and casualty coverage? A. To serve as a temporary evidence of insurance until the formal policy is issued. B. To enact a permanent change to a policy's terms during the policy period. C. To provide transfer of liability to a reinsurer before coverage begins. D. To guarantee the payment of claims regardless of policy exclusions. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that a binder provides temporary evidence of coverage until the formal policy is issued, ensuring that insureds have proof of insurance in the interim. Reason B is not correct. A permanent change to policy terms midterm is accomplished through an endorsement, not a binder. Reason C is not correct. Transfer of liability to a reinsurer is unrelated to a binder's function. Reason D is not correct. Guaranteeing claim payment regardless of exclusions exceeds a binder's scope, which only evidences coverage. Question 20. In property insurance, an endorsement is primarily used to A. Modify or clarify coverage provisions during the policy term. B. Reason B is not correct. This clause describes the estate interest, but is not mandatory for validity. C. Transfer underwriting risk to a separate insurer. D. Establish the policy's initial effective date. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that an endorsement modifies or clarifies the provisions of an existing policy during its term, allowing changes without issuing a new policy. Reason B is not correct. Temporary proof of coverage before issuance refers to a binder, not an endorsement. Reason C is not correct. Transferring underwriting risk to another insurer describes reinsurance, not an endorsement. Reason D is not correct. Setting the initial effective date of a policy occurs at issuance, not through an endorsement. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below. We read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.